Dangerous stuff. I should point out that I got injured on the way to the Bay radio station a couple of weeks ago.
Twice?
Largely twice. But the first time, we were cycling up to sort of get the show around the studio, and I was sort of cycling behind Claire, had a bag on my back, and I sort of took my hands off to try and adjust it, because it was sort of slipping off. And as I did so, Claire specifically having to slow down to go past the car. I mean, like, put my hands on the brake, go flying over the front wheel, sort of landed, like, doing like a little roll in the road.
I have yet to forgive myself.
And coincidentally, from the other side of the road, with one of our friends looking, laughing at my pain.
Oh, no.
Oh, it was a traumatic... See, that is a dedication to this show. This is the sort of thing we go through, listeners, just to bring you just first quality, top quality comedy, bantery, whatever you want to call it. Entertainment radio. Every Tuesday, so I hope you appreciate it.
I do hope you do too. Talking about the whole bike accident thing, it just reminds me of, like, it's one of those anecdotes that I've just reached the age where it no longer embarrasses me because it concerns a former self that I no longer feel especially affiliated with. So I think I've come to a point when I can recount it slightly amusingly, but still with a little underlying sense of bitterness on a not very popular radio show.
An extremely popular radio. What are you talking about?
666 listeners.
That's quite a lot. Well, that's only the ones that voted on one thing, so that's 666 times 2 is the actual number, which makes it 1,332
Ben does
listeners.
economics, that's the closest thing to maths. But yeah, I used to cycle to school when I was about year 8, so I'd say like 13, and I do have reasonably good spatial awareness now, but let's say it's taken quite a lot of work to reach this level of maybe okay awareness. And despite the fact I knew that cars drove on the left-hand side of the road, I did not necessarily think that the same rules applied to bikes. So I would cycle to school very, very quickly, because, I was in a hurry, I was usually running a bit late. My school was about 2.5 miles from my house. I'd, full pelt down some pretty hefty roads, on whichever side of the road took my fancy, to be honest. Sometimes the shade was on the left and I fancied that. Sometimes there were some quite attractive people on the right and fancied that. 14, not 13. 13 would be weird. So yeah, I carried on in this fashion for a long time without a helmet, I hasten to add. And a lot of people noticed this, like fellow parents at the school would comment to my mum and be like, "Oh, I saw your daughter the other day. She was riding on the wrong side of the road quite fast. Like, you should probably say something about this." And my mother, despite being quite protective, neglected to talk to me about it. I don't know if it was one of those sick parental exercises where they want to see, like, you'll learn the hard way, paralysed. Never brought it up until later. So I carried on in this fashion for quite a while, until one day, there's a bit of a backstory to this, which you'll have to bear with me. I used to play the cello at school, not through my own volition, because the cello is a ridiculously large instrument and very cumbersome.
Like a gigantic violin.
Gigantic violin.
Who was it who saw the violin and thought, you know what this needs? It needs to be much, much bigger.
But not as big as double bass. Not quite that big.
No.
We'll scale it down. So
that would just be excessive, really.
Yeah, it's not hardcore enough to be a double bass, but it's not, like, whizzy enough to be a violin. So it's basically kind of a fat kid's instrument. I was not a fat kid. I was a very, very small kid, and therefore my instrument was larger than me. And it was very weird.
I still have that problem, so...
smut on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Smut on the show.
That is the no. That was again the
sound of your instrument.
No, the what's it called, the level of sophistication falling.
You have to excuse us today. We're very, very tired.
Extraordinarily so.
Yes. But I had a large cello in a sort of quilted blue, electric blue, Larry case. I was quite embarrassed by this instrument at my age because it wasn't a very sexy instrument to play. And so I had to get this cello home somehow. So my mum offered to walk 2.5 miles to school, which is very generous of her, pick up my cello, walk home with it on her back whilst I cycled home on my bike. Now, despite the fact that I now see this was quite a nice act on my parents' part, I was just horrendously embarrassed at the fact that all the most embarrassing things about my life would be centring around chucking out time at school. Namely, I played the cello, it was enormous, I was smaller than it was in a very large quilted blue case, and my mother would be there walking because she didn't drive. So many things combining, which in my poor 13/14-year-old mind is quite upsetting. So I literally chucked this cello onto my mother and cycled off pell-mell on the right-hand side of the road. At which point, I saw a young gentleman of whom I was rather fond walking with his friends on the side of the road. And it's, standard. It's a primal thing. When we see someone we find attractive, we try to impress them. So I thought it'd be quite impressive to bunny hop off the road, up the curb, onto the pavement, and skid up alongside him and be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Unfortunately, I didn't get as far as the curb. I smacked right into it and flew. Myself, my bag, and all my books flew onto the pavement in front of him. And it was very, very awkward. And I was quite injured, but, the shame covered up the pain. And I got back on my bike and cycled off. And the next day he was like, "Oh, Claire, was that you falling off your bike yesterday?" And I was like, "No. What? No, bike? But I didn't even own a bike. God, no. I have jetpacks to go to school. Are you impressed by that? Oh, no, don't go away. Don't go away, please." And it was all in all, very tragic. But yeah, so I just thought I'd share that with all of you.
Claire.
But once again, dicing with death.
Speaking of dangerous activities, I've heard of an amazing place. And I want to share it with you listeners. I'm not asking your permission because, frankly, I can talk about whatever I want, and you have to listen. You little cudgering little people sitting around listening passively to your radio rather than being on it and doing what you want. People who aren't in camera listening to your radio, expecting it to tell you what to do with your life and entertain you for an hour. Well, you know what? I'm not going to help you, okay? I think you should help yourself. I'm not going to be your your genie. I'm not your guide. Yeah, that's not something I signed up for. I'm just a radio presenter. So frankly, I don't know what you want from me. I'm not doing it.
All right then. Apart from sexual favours.
But anyway, yeah, so, apart from that. But, anyway, yeah, I had a very interesting place. Has anyone ever heard of Action Park?
I have, because you talked about it prior to the show, but
that
for purposes of the fact, I shall pretend I have not.
Action Park was a water park in the New Jersey area of America that was open from about 1970 to 1996, which is notable for being, what can you describe as, hilariously yet morbidly dangerous. It was an extremely popular water park that attracted a massive audience from around that area, around the entire sort of New York, New Jersey state, and there was a list on Wikipedia of dangerous things about it, which is I'm
on Wikipedia right now actually, and it's got an alpine slide listed as one of these things, and I don't want to seem dim or anything. Maybe an alpine slide is quite a common thing, but to me that's just an avalanche, isn't it?
No, literally, it's ridiculous. Among attractions, it had there was a sort of diving cliff over a swimming pool. Yeah, a diving cliff where people sort of run over the cliff and dive off it into this mildly deep water. The main flaw being that, first of all, the water was nowhere near deep enough for people to dive into. But more importantly, there was no way for the people swimming below to know that those cliffs were diving cliffs.
Boy.
And so it was a regular occurrence that people would land on top of other people in the pool, and the lifeguard would sort of have to jump in and rescue them. But it gets worse. There was I kid you not, a log flume in which the water around the flume was well known by those managing the park to be infested with poisonous snakes. I kid you not.
You could not make it up.
On top of this, there was only ever one lifeguard per attraction, and there were no age limits. Most of these things were manned by children of about the age of 14 and 15, who would often sort of have to deal with other stuff. On top of that, there's the fact that most of the people this park used to attract, and most of its advertising was aimed at people in working class communities in the New Jersey area, an area in which there is infamously few swimming pools. So a very large proportion of this population did not know how to swim.
Oh my!
Literally did not know how to swim. On top of that, there were just stupid things. There was there's something known as a Tarzan swing. It was a giant metal arch suspended about 8 meters over a pool of water. Yeah, people would jump onto this swing, and first of all, the water did not cover the entire swinging area of the swing. So if you jumped off immediately, you would land on concrete. And more importantly, if you landed in the water for some reason was not heated, and so tended to be incredibly cold.
Oh,
and someone eventually almost died when they caught a heart attack due to cold shock after jumping into the water.
Oh my
People would regularly lose the ability to swim because it was so cold. On top of that, they had 24-hour alcohol licensing, so the patrons sort of wander around wankered, diving into water they could not swim in. It's
extraordinary.
I've never encountered the idea of something that was hilariously dangerous.
Well,
but I just can't. But I was reading these things, and I just can't shake the feeling that I would love to have gone. The excitement to know that this journey to the water park may be your last.
Indeed, the safest part of the whole trip, even if you went there on a Reliant Robin with the wrong type of petrol inside it and a canister of gas.
They used to put a shot of cyanide into every third batch of candy floss.
Yeah.
Okay, that one's made up, but they might as well have.
It's tantamount to that. I'm on the Wikipedia page as well at the moment.
Yeah.
There's quite an interesting section about they had the things called super go-karts. No, sorry, they're super go-karts. They also had lola cars.
I've forgotten about this.
And apparently the park management only briefly, so basically it's fine, set up a microbrewery right next to the car.
No, there was something more.
Racetrack.
There was something more than that. They took off the speed. There's like a way they limit the speed in those sort of go-kart things. And there's like some sort of device. I remember, and they removed it. For a while, on the basis of people getting bored going at a normal speed, and then and people would use them as bumper cars, and they could go about 40 miles an hour, and people would just be like going into head-on collisions in these bloody things and going flying.
Well, that segues in quite neatly with the microbrewery thing, because what would happen is while it was there, after hours, so it's after hours, it's fine. Employees looking for after hours fun, according to Wikipedia, would nip off to the old microbrewery, get absolutely wasted, and then ride the cars on Route 94, which I'm pretty sure is not cool.
Oh god!
But then again, would love to go.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
Tell you, I wouldn't necessarily love to go. Talking of attractions, a couple of years ago went to Wookey Hole in Somerset.
Please tell me it had something to do with Chewbacca. Tell me.
Sadly not. But Somerset is a great place. It's possibly my favourite county. It's up there, definitely. But it's just a very peculiar place because it's quite a chilled county, and as far as tourist attraction goes, it has weird things like chalk men etched into the soil and like crop circles, or in this case, a big hole in the ground, cavernous hole. And so Wookey Hole, it's quite an exciting name. I'm not entirely sure the etymology.
But it doesn't have Wookiees in it. No Wookiees.
Doesn't have Wookiees in it. My conductor, when I was at orchestra at school, was called Simon Wookey. Little shout out to him there. If he's
Did he sound like Chewbacca?
No, but he sounded like he was coming from a deep cave.
Elaborate, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very cavernous voice, that man. But yeah, Wookey Hole, it's sort of like a cave in the ground. So the good people of Wookey, I assume is the place surrounding it, I don't know, have built this tourist attraction around it. But of course, like once you've been taken down, obviously you have the hard hat thing. You have to like all say your name in a row, and you will get a number. And if number 15 doesn't answer us because he's fallen down a hole, it's all quite exciting.
Well, safety is paramount.
Safety is indeed paramount, especially in this day and age. But having been round the cave probably takes about, for having around the safe room, it takes about 5 minutes, and you've paid to get in. And even though that includes a complimentary glow stick, which I was well excited by, it's all over with quite quickly. So what the Wookey Hole sort of powers that be have done is they've kind of extended it into a weird kind of trippy, giddy, cyclic kind of amusement park of a very, very incongruous amusements in retrospect. I think at the time I was slightly too spaced out to...
So it's just a park, so it's a park, an amusement park based around a hole.
Well, that's the thing. You go into the hole, it's kind of like... when you're at
different types of holes. Of all different shapes and sizes. This one is shaped like a crescent moon.
It finishes in a black hole, and you all die.
Whoa.
Then you sort of get ferried through, like following a guide through this hole. You go through it, it's quite nice, it's lit up. You come out into broad daylight, into what I can only describe as a kind of fairy garden, where it's like a kind of orchard that's fenced in, and then somebody has laboriously gone round making little fake fairies, kind of in an Arthur Conan Doyle way, and just stuck them in trees. And there's weird tinkly music playing, and there's no other way to go. There's only one path, so you all like traipse down this path, blinking still in the new sunlight with your hard hats on, going, well, this is weird. It's quite pretty though. Look at that one. It's got like purple wings, and that one's got multicolour wings, and that's a dragon. What's the dragon doing here? And what's the same size as the fairies? Wouldn't the fairies eat the dragon? So you're a bit confused with this. Turn a corner.
There is, of course, a reasonable explanation. So.
Oh, is there?
Oh yeah, for the dragon piece. I'm assuming.
Oh, of course, of course.
I
do not doubt that Wookey Hole were milking their already quite mediocre tourist attraction. So then you sort of veer off, the path veers off, it's still linked, like fenced in with a chain link fence, you can't go anywhere else, you've paid for your ticket, you're in it for the long run